Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Team Talk. I am your co-host Mark Iorio, along with my friend over here, Milton Corsi, to my left.
Why every time that you say my name and say friend, do you have this smirk
Because
on your face?
because it's just a thing, man. With
Okay.
you.
Well, yeah, whatever.
Because I'm
dude.
trying,
Whatever.
don't whatever me, man.
Whatever.
Don't
Let's just
whatever.
get to the show.
Yeah.
All right, nobody's here to hear you.
So we have Sean Matthew and Chris Coates with us from SES ESOP Strategies. Welcome, gentlemen. Great to have you on the program.
Thank you both for having us.
Yeah. Sean Tamba-Matthew, sorry.
Sean Matthew's fine too.
Sean Matthew's fine too. Great to have you on the show. We are really excited about talking about ESOPs, not to be confused with ASOPs, right? ASOPs
Not by me, at least. I don't know about you, but by me,
Employee
no.
stock option plans, right?
Stock ownership.
Stock ownership plan or ownership plans, okay. Talk a little bit about what SES ESOP Strategies does. I mean, what you guys do for a living and how you help organizations.
Okay, well, why don't I start and then we can
Yeah.
tag team. So SES ESOP Strategies is an advisory firm for business owners about whether or not an employee stock ownership plan is a good mechanism for selling or pulling money out of their business in a tax-advantaged manner that gives benefit to their employees. We are a multidisciplinary firm. We have 7, soon to be 8 attorneys, 5 investment bankers, a couple of business professionals, and we seek to find the appropriate answer, what's the best answer for the business owner based on what they want to accomplish, what their goals are on whether or not a private sale, PE sale, an ESOP is the right answer. We are part of a broader platform. We're part of Stevens & Lee, which is a law firm, 180-person law firm, of whom Sean is a shareholder. And we also have an affiliated mid-market investment bank, Griffin. And so depending on what the right answer is, we can implement the solution, whichever that is.
Okay.
Cool.
Anything else?
Yeah, no, perfect. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it really does. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now, I'm sure that you guys get a lot of business owners who come to you and are interested in kind of evaluating whether or not they're a good fit for a ESOP. What are some of the fundamental things that you look for in an organization to say, yeah, this is a good fit for you, or not so much?
Right. Well, there are a few factors that we look at. Okay. 2 are just sort of basic, numbers game. One is, do you have around 20 employees? The other is, do you have about $750,000 in EBITDA for your company? Having the cash flow to really use a leveraged ESOP structure, which is how business owners typically get liquidity out of their business, transition the ownership of their business. But the sort of last collective factor is a trusting relationship with your workforce and a pretty strong management team. You need both of those really to really leverage the ESOP and to really have the company and the employees get the real benefit of wealth generation and economic accretion that comes out of a well-done ESOP structure.
Sean, Chris, we talk a lot about culture in this business on Team Talk. And when you talk about that level of due diligence, when you're looking at organizations that might be a good fit for SES ESOP Strategies, culture is an important part, right? It's got to be, as you said, there's got to be a really good bond between the management team, the executive team, and the employees. How do you evaluate that? When you go into an organization, you look at the culture. What sort of things are you looking for? Aside and apart from the tangible things, the tangible assets, these are more intangible things, about the employees. What do you look for?
I think one of the things that we look for is just sort of the vibe of the place. Is this a firm that in a sense needs private equity? They need outside investors because it doesn't have the culture or the sort of employee base and makeup that it needs, and the management team that it needs to be a sustainable going concern after the business owner leaves. you have companies that you see where it's a one man or one woman show. If they left, all the business would leave because all the business is tied to them.
Right.
The companies that we see who do a really good job of it already have a sort of an ownership culture in place. They've got a strong management team in place. They've got a second or a third in command who can help facilitate the diligence work that has to get done on the front end in terms of modeling and ensuring that the ESOP transaction is the right thing to do. And
Right.
we advise them that process and walk them through that. But the culture piece is, like you said, is really important. And one example of this is American Asphalt down in South Jersey.
Oh, yeah.
They did their sort of initial ESOP transaction back in 2018, and I remember walking into their break room and seeing pictures of all of the team members and their spouses on the wall, and then you start to say, hey, this makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
And you hear from Bob Brown, who's the CEO there, and you hear about what he wants to do with the business, why he's doing an ESOP, and it just clicks. And those are the companies that really structure that the ESOP structure makes the most sense because they have the culture in place. They have the management team in place to really have the business be sustainable post-transaction. And that's what our goal is. We don't want to see bad ESOP companies out there. The tax benefits of ESOPs are fantastic. You get tax deferral here, especially here in Jersey. You're talking about, being able to defer what is over 30% of your net proceeds going towards taxes. You don't have to do that in the ESOP structure. You can really use the benefits of that.
Sure.
If all you're doing this for is tax benefits, it's probably not the right fit.
Yep.
You want to make sure that you have that culture in place in order to make sure to have a sustainable structure going forward.
Yeah.
Just to add on, and again, you mentioned it, Sean, it's about, the caring for the employees, but also the legacy of the business and being part of the community. So, many of the ESOPs, it's important to maintain that business. And I think what you also find is once the ESOP is in place, it becomes part of the brand of the company. They celebrate it. They celebrate it as part of their culture because it's an owner mentality. People want to be working there. It's part of the reason they stay, and it's a good retention strategy. Because it's sort of it becomes part of their brand and culture going forward, just because it enhances that.
Yeah, exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's really quite interesting because, I've had the opportunity to kind of talk to and work with a few organizations or teams in the PE space, and it's kind of what you're describing is kind of almost antithetical to what I've experienced with them, right? Like they tend not to look at the human side of things. It's kind of a strictly financial transaction, and these guys are and these people are financial engineers, and it's kind of like if this fits X, Y, and Z, good deal. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So. And
that's why we look at it holistically, and again, sort of getting back to it, trying to figure out what are the objectives. Because if you do want, the most money in the now and the quickest money, well, an ESOP isn't the right answer. You are looking at a PE transaction, third-party transaction, an IPO if it's available to you. If it's a tightly held family business and that's the most important thing for you, then you're not going to do an ESOP. You're going to do some intergenerational sale or a estate planning mechanism.
Right.
But if you do care about the community, if you do care about your employees, if you do want to take advantage of the tax benefits, both for you and the company, from a sustainability standpoint, then an ESOP can be a very good answer.
Yeah.
Right.
And what happens when you go into an organization, unlike the one you described, Sean, and you don't see that culture as that camaraderie within the organization? Is it something you try to help fix, or do you say politely, you know what, this is probably not a good fit for us, based on the observations that we made from a people perspective? Do you walk away from that deal, or do you try to help, solve some of the problems?
If we find that there's an interest in doing an ESOP, and some folks might say, hey, I need to retain my employees and I want to get liquidity, and I don't want to necessarily sell to private equity, but the culture's not just right. It's been more a little heavy on the dictatorship side in terms of how you're doing your business operations, as opposed to being a leader of men and women and sort of bringing them along, obviously setting the course for them and having them be part of a team. When we see that, one of the things that an ESOP trustee is going to be looking at in a deal and a transaction is, so what's the management succession plan here? Are you selling the business and then looking to step out, day 2 after closing with no real succession plan in place? If that's going to be factored into, how you're looking at the value of the business and how you're trying to assess whether or not those contracts are going to be retained with various customers. So it often relates to, when we see a person who wants to do an ESOP, but, just sort of wants to back away, it's like, look, you're going to have a conversation with your management team about this, bring them aboard. And many times, if the management team's ready to take control of the business and has that aptitude, the ESOP's like, okay, finally, thank goodness.
Sure.
It's here, we can do this, we can run this in a way that will, provide a broader benefit to the employees and really retain folks, especially in situations like that where you might have some struggles with retention of employees.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Now, I want to go back to something that you talked about when you gave us the example of American Asphalt, and you talked about when you walked into the lunchroom and you saw everybody's picture and their spouse and all those kind of good things. So it was, that's kind of a marker about how engaged and how invested in the business the people were. Are there kind of telltale signs that you might notice with organizations who say, wow, here's a workforce that's truly engaged and truly feels that sense of ownership versus others? Is there anything, any signs that you look for specifically?
Obviously, when you see pictures of employees on the wall, that's helpful. Not every company is like that.
Sure.
I think that we really get to that in our initial conversations, because with respect to ESOPs, there's a huge education component that's related to the work that we do. ESOPs have been around since 1974, when ERISA was signed into law. In the Ford administration, yet we only have 6,300 ESOP companies across the country, or so, somewhere between 6,300. You might see 7,000 depending on what data you're looking at. The reason for that is that it's poorly understood. Not every trusted advisor really has a good grasp of it when he or she should, really, because that's a really critical tool that every business owner should be considering, especially as we have this silver tsunami and people, baby boomers looking to transition their businesses and whatnot. So I spend about a third of my time doing business development, but when I say doing business development, it's really education. And part of that education process is just sort of asking the person about what kind of business they have. And you can tell a lot from that conversation when they talk about their employees, how they talk about their employees. A lot of them are like, hey, my employees have been family, I want to take care of them.
Sure.
This business, has been in the community and in my family for generations and generations. I want to make sure that I'm not selling it to someone who's going to end up closing up shop because it's a strategic play. Yeah. So we find out most of that information when we're having those consultative discussions with business owners, their trusted advisors and whatnot, to really get an understanding of the culture of the company. And we find that obviously everyone thinks that they're the greatest manager in the world, sure. But we actually find for those folks who have taken the time to say, I want to seek out the ESOP as an option, to take the time to spend. These are busy people, they're entrepreneurs or owner operators, they got a full plate. To talk about, what people might consider exotic or eccentric, like transition structure, which it really isn't, to take that time to understand it, to really be well versed in it, and we'll elicit whether or not it makes sense. Talking about management team, talking about succession planning from the business perspective, outside the ownership transition, we're able to glean whether or not you have the right cultural fit. I would say 99 times out of 100, we're spot on just from that conversation.
Yeah, and I think there's a spirit of empowerment, I guess I'll call it. Because if to have that sort of owner mentality, you have to be willing to trust the employees and
Absolutely.
educate them,
Yep.
and having that sort of mentality of mentoring and empowering and allowing people to be part of the business, because that's what you need for a succession plan. You need, it's not just, okay, I need one other person who can do what I do and then we're good to go. It's really creating that culture of, empowerment, ownership mentality, which then, carries into with an ESOP,
Absolutely.
the actual sharing of that benefit. Now, just quickly, you talked about the misconceptions. I'm in the business development role that I do. A lot of it is, as Sean says, education, because you hear the accountants and trusted advisors who say, "Oh, well, no, you don't do an ESOP because you're not going to be able to sell the business. Oh, the employees can't afford to pay for it." All these things that are actually misconceptions,
Yep.
because it's a benefits that's done for the employees. It is an actual sale of a business, and if someone wants to buy the company down the road and isn't interested in an ESOP or maintaining the ESOP, well, it's just it's a
Different
process you
mechanism,
have to go
yeah.
through
Right.
to unwind it. And again, it's a benefit plan, so you have to be careful
Yep.
from that standpoint. But the hindrances for doing an ESOP many times are based on misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Right.
We're going to have to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk to you both about what you think makes SES ESOP Strategies different based on the structure that you currently have with Stevens and Lee as the parent company here. So we'll be right back after this commercial message. Don't go away.
Kinda new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Welcome back to Team Talk. I'm your co-host, Mark Iorio, along with Milton Corsi, and we have Sean Tamba-Matthew and Chris Coates with us from SES ESOP Strategies. I won't go into the titles, but basically, Sean, you're a partner at Stevens and Lee, which is the law firm that sort of is the parent, and Chris is the vice president. I guess vice president, just plain?
Business development.
Business development, yeah. Okay. You had a hell of a career too, boy, I'll tell you, before you got here. You're 30 years with
Accenture.
Accenture.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'd love to talk to you about how you got here and why you love what you do, but tell us a little bit about what you guys think makes SES ESOP Strategies different from other strategy firms, ESOP strategy firms out there. Sean, I'll turn it to you.
Sure. Yeah, and I think it really sort of dovetails into sort of how we got here as well. So I'll give a little backstory. So, I grew up in a relatively low-income neighborhood just outside of Cleveland. Came here for college. Went to Penn. Went to got involved in political organizations because that's how I thought I was going to change the world. After getting involved in a few campaigns, I was like, that is not how I'm going to change the world. And so I left college trying to think about, well, how am I going to effectuate this? Public speaking is fine, but I never imagined myself to be the next great, Clarence Darrow or Perry Mason or whatever. The courtroom dramas really never did much for me, but knew I wanted to go into law school. So I wanted to do something that, was mission oriented, obviously, sort of because of that passion, because of my own experience, but in the transactional space. And there are more buckets these days than when I was back in law school a few years ago. but there weren't many. And I quite fortuitously got introduced to Jim Steicher, who's one of our colleagues at SES ESOP Strategies. He's the chairman of the group, and so we just talked about employee ownership and how it works. And I had never heard about what an employee stock ownership plan was. I remember, on the train looking at this stuff, I was like, this stuff looks this is
Foreign, man. It looks
foreign. Yeah, it's before I take tax. And I was really drawn in by that sort of mission orientation that Jim had. Like, look, we're a business. We go out and advise business owners on a complex leverage buyout transaction in a regulated space. However, all the folks that we work with are drawn to our work because they see the value not only to the business owner in terms of being able to preserve that business owner's wealth and what they've built in their communities, but also to the employees on the back end to build real economic opportunity for them. When you look at the statistics of the various research that have been done on employee ownership, you have employees who are frontline employees who end up leaving their companies with hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $1 million or plus, in their retirement accounts for those folks who have been in an ESOP-owned company for a very long time.
Sure.
And so our group sees that, and that drives the way that we do our work. We want to provide quality service to our clients. We understand that ESOPs, you're selling to a qualified retirement plan.
Yep.
And so that's going to be, you're going to get oversight from the Department of Labor and the IRS. Our approach to our transactions is to ensure that our clients are getting fair value out of the deal, but also, looking to do it in a way that's sustainable, not only from a business perspective in terms of the debt load that you're putting on the company, but also from the perspective of, the regulatory perspective, and making sure that you're setting it up in a way that's going to be in compliance with the regulations under ERISA and whatnot. And that drives our group. I mean, there are deals that we simply don't do. There's money that we could get that we won't get because we've got a pretty broad and diverse team in terms of disciplinary ability, and that's all tied to our focus and what we believe and how we believe that ESOP deals should be structured. The last thing I'll say about that sort of the mission context is that we can serve every ESOPable company that's out there from a leveraged ESOP capacity. And that's not true of every service provider, and we can do that because we have the flexibility of having both the legal and financial advisory services coming through one channel. And so that's not to cast aspersions upon an investment banking group in one section of the country or not, but it's more just the nature of our practice being structured that way allows us to serve everyone in a manner that is appropriate from a cost perspective, but also provides real value, real services, and at the end of the day, a sustainable solution for the business owner and for the employees in the company.
Good. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, great stuff. Now, gentlemen, let's do a little role play here. Okay. I am a entrepreneur, business owner, where I put that cap on, and I come to see you guys. I built this business up from scratch, got to a place where we have significant revenue. I'll just hypothetically throw out a number, $30 million a year. We've got 50 employees, and I'm looking for a way to maybe begin to transition out. Right? Why should I consider an ESOP?
Right.
Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons.
Okay.
One, and this will get to, what is it you want to accomplish? Are you looking to sell the whole company, or are you looking to just get a little bit of cash out to start the journey, maybe start investing some of your assets? Because ESOPs are very flexible. They're complicated in part because of that flexibility, but you don't have to sell the whole company. You can pull some money out and still take advantage of the tax benefits of just deferring the capital gains on the share that you're selling. But again, if it's a low basis company and you want to defer the capital gains, an ESOP can be a very attractive option. If you want to stay involved and have time to build your succession plan while you're pulling some money out, it can be an attractive option because you're not going to lose as much control as you would to a PE firm third-party sale. If you want a retention mechanism for your employees, and if you care about those employees and want to keep the business sort of sustainable in the community, it's a good option. So those are some of the factors, but again, it gets back to what is it you're trying to accomplish? Do you want to get out quickly? Do you want a little bit of a time horizon? The way an ESOP works is you're actually taking a loan out on the balance sheet, which then gets loaned internally to fund the ESOP, which is then purchase the shares from you. So that's the way it works mechanically, but
Okay.
because of that, it creates the luxury of time because you're waiting for the primary debt to be paid down, before the ESOP, it gets funded. So, again, your time horizon can matter,
Right.
because you have to be willing to stay around while because you're paying down debt.
When you talk about, Chris, it's financed through the balance sheet, is there a valuation actually done on the business so that, the employees that are going to own the organization understand what the current value is, and then over the course of time, you continue to do valuations on the business? Is that the way it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way it works. And so, after the ESOP transaction's done on an annual basis, and this is a requirement under ERISA actually, for privately held, ESOP-owned companies, you have to have a valuation, and it's typically done as of the last day of the plan year for most companies. That's, December 31st. That participant statement is important. It's a communication tool. To talk to employees about, well, here's where we were last year, here's the value of this stock now, let's talk about what drove that value. And so, it's a great way to sort of talk about and engage employees as to, how the business works, how what they do on a daily basis drives value to the business, and then ultimately drives value towards their entire retirement accounts.
The one thing that's really interesting about this is that, with an ESOP, no one's going away from the transaction after the transaction's over. And to not take anything away from a venture capital firm or a PE firm or a merger or an acquisition, but once the deal's over, the bankers are gone, the attorneys are gone, sorry, Sean, but they're gone. CPAs
No
are gone.
offense,
CPAs are gone,
They're
yep.
all gone. All the
Right.
people inside the transaction disappear. And what's left? The culture, the people.
Right.
Here, everything's left over, right? Everyone in that transaction is there. They're part of the new business. So the culture is going to hopefully remain intact and continue to grow.
And that's what I was talking about before. I think it actually enhances, if the company is a fit for an ESOP, it probably had a cultural leaning toward being a good fit.
Yeah.
And then once the ESOP is in place, it enhances it because if it had an owner mentality, well, now that is only going to grow with the actual participation in the ESOP.
Sure.
If you care about your employees, it's only a greater retention strategy than just the culture itself, because there's a financial, benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
So,
skin in the game. Yep.
so it's, and that's why I was saying before, it sort of becomes part of the brand too.
Yeah, of course.
They celebrate it.
Yeah, you become part of the brand. We also become part of an employee ownership community. When we see our
True.
clients at
Very true.
conferences. Now, and sort of knock on. This is not wood, but we'll have to-
Underneath it.
underneath it is. So there we go.
You can get through it.
There, obviously the pandemic's a real thing, and you have to deal with it. But part of the loss that we had was just connecting with our client at ESOP conferences
Right.
and whatnot, and you become part of the community. You stay in touch and you help them, to grow their company, help them talk through challenges and issues that they come up that they face, and to be able to sort of stay there and to you retain your advisors to a certain extent, you retain your culture, and helping to have those two things grow with you as the company transitions.
Yeah. Tell you what, gentlemen, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I can't
Love
believe that, and please, I'd love you gentlemen to come back because there's so many more questions that I have to ask, and we just ran out of time. It was fantastic. But in closing, if there's a business owner out there and he or she is interested in speaking to you guys about, whether or not an ESOP is a good fit for them and their organization, I'd like you to take a look at that camera right there and tell them how they can get in touch with you guys.
Sure. Well, you can visit our website, www.sesop.com. And then feel free to just email Chris or myself. My email address is sean.matthew@sesesop.com. And then Chris, your email address is?
It's christopher.coates@sesesop.com.
Yeah, and we're both available on LinkedIn and whatnot, and happy to have a conversation. Look, this is not only our jobs, it's our passion, and we love talking about it. My wife says probably a little bit too much, but it's she married me, and it's the life she lives.
And there are case studies on the website,
Yeah.
so if you feel free to poke around and you can sort
Very
of
cool.
learn a little bit more
Yeah.
about what we do. But
You
it
guys
is a
have been
passion.
great. Thank you.
Great.
It's been a real pleasure.
It has.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Tell you, ladies and gentlemen, if you have a chance just to talk to Sean and Chris about ESOPs, you'll see that the passion comes through for doing what they do. They love helping other companies and business owners just exit with a great deal of passion and culture, and it's a wonderful operation. So please look them up. Thanks for joining us on Team Talk. We'll see you next time. Thanks, Milt. That was great, buddy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Gentlemen,
Sean,
again, a
Chris,
pleasure.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you
Thank
both.
you.
It's been tremendous.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next time.